"Get your dirty hands off that railing. The cleaning crew enters through the service hatch in the back." Those were the words that ended Captain Brock Halloway's 30-year career, though he didn't know it yet. He stood on the tarmac of Teterboro Airport, sneering at a woman in a grey hoodie and sneakers who was attempting to board the $30 million Gulfstream G650. He saw a trespasser. He saw a nuisance. He saw someone who didn't belong in the elite world of private aviation. What he failed to see was the woman who had signed his paycheck that morning. And by the time he realized his mistake, it wasn't just the flight that was cancelled. It was his entire life. The wind cut across the tarmac at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, carrying the scent of jet fuel and freezing rain. It was 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, a time when the world was usually grey and uninviting. But for Jasmine Banks, this was usually the golden hour. Jasmine adjusted the hood of her oversized charcoal cashmere sweater. To the untrained eye, she looked like she had just rolled out of bed and thrown on laundry day clothes. Her leggings were black and nondescript. Her sneakers were scuffed. There were no logos visible, no flashing jewelry, and her hair was pulled back in a messy, functional bun. She carried a battered leather rucksack over one shoulder. She looked like a tired graduate student, or perhaps an exhausted nanny. She certainly didn't look like the founder and majority shareholder of Apex Logistics, a global supply chain firm that had just acquired a controlling stake in Stratosphere Aviation, the very charter company operating out of this hangar. Jasmine walked toward the glass doors of the FBO, Fixed Base Operator Terminal, the private gateway for the super-rich. She was exhausted. She had spent the last 48 hours in a crisis negotiation in Tokyo and had flown commercial back to New York because her private jet had been undergoing maintenance. Now she just wanted to get on the shuttle flight to London for the board meeting that would finalize the merger. She pushed through the revolving doors, expecting the usual quiet efficiency. The lobby was all beige leather, marble floors, and the soft hum of CNN on a flat-screen TV. At the reception desk sat a woman named Brenda. Her name tag was pinned perfectly straight on a blazer that looked a size too tight. Brenda was furiously typing on a computer, her face set in a permanent expression of low-level annoyance. "Good morning," Jasmine said, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. "I'm here for the 6:30 departure to London Luton, tail number N640SA. Brenda didn't look up. She finished typing a sentence, hit enter with an aggressive snap of her finger, and then slowly raised her eyes. She scanned Jasmine from the scuffed sneakers to the messy bun. Her lip curled slightly. "Deliveries are around the back, honey," Brenda said, her voice dripping with sickly sweet condescension. "This is the passenger lounge?" Jasmine blinked, too tired to be immediately angry. "I'm not a delivery driver. I'm a passenger on the flight." Brenda let out a short, sharp laugh. She leaned over the counter, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "Look, I don't know who you think you're kidding, or if you're looking for an autograph from the rapper flying out later. But you can't be in here. This is a private terminal, members only." "I know where I am," Jasmine said, her tone hardening. She reached into her rucksack. "I have my passport and my itinerary right here." "I don't need to see your fake itinerary printed off the internet," Brenda snapped, finally standing up. She was tall, imposing, and clearly enjoying the power trip. "Do you know how much a seat on a Gulfstream costs? It costs more than you'll make in 10 years. Now please leave before I call security. You're disturbing the atmosphere." The lobby was empty. There was no atmosphere to disturb. Jasmine took a deep breath. She had dealt with this before. The assumption that a black woman in a hoodie couldn't possibly belong in the C-suite, let alone own the jet. Usually, she let her assistant, Leo, handle the logistics, but Leo was already in London preparing the boardroom. "My name is Jasmine Banks," she said clearly. "Check the manifest. If you don't, you're going to be explaining to your supervisor why the lead passenger was denied boarding." Brenda rolled her eyes so hard it looked painful. "Fine. I'll check the manifest just so you can see I'm right. And then you're going to walk out that door." Brenda hammered on the keyboard, her acrylic nails clicking like hail on a tin roof. She pulled up the flight log for N9 SA. Her eyes narrowed. "The manifest lists a J. Banks," Brenda muttered. She looked back at Jasmine, then back at the screen. "That's obviously a mistake. Or you stole someone's identity. The notes here say VIP priority. You are not VIP priority." "I am J. Banks," Jasmine said, placing her passport on the high marble counter. "Check the ID." Brenda didn't touch the passport. She recoiled from it, as if it were contaminated. "I'm not touching that. I'm calling the flight crew. Captain Halloway will deal with this. He doesn't tolerate riffraff." Brenda picked up the phone, her eyes locked on Jasmine with a look of smug victory. "Captain?" "It's Brenda at the desk." "Yes. Yes, I'm sorry to bother you, sir. We have a situation. A woman is here claiming to be the principal passenger." "Yes." "No, definitely not. She looks like she slept in a dumpster." "Okay. I'll hold her here." She hung up and crossed her arms. "The captain is coming out, and let me tell you, Brock Halloway is not a patient man. You're in big trouble now." Jasmine just stood there, her hand resting on her passport. A cold calm washed over her. She checked her watch. It was 6:15 a.m. She had time. The automatic doors from the tarmac slid open with a pneumatic hiss. In walked Captain Brock Halloway. He was a caricature of a pilot. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair coiffed into a perfect wave. His uniform was immaculate. Double-breasted navy blazer with gold stripes on the sleeves, a crisp white shirt, and a tie that looked like it had been starched into submission. He was wearing aviator sunglasses, despite being indoors. He walked with a swagger that suggested he owned the very air he breathed. Behind him trailed a nervous-looking first officer named Timothy, who looked barely old enough to drive a car, let alone a jet. Halloway took off his sunglasses, revealing icy blue eyes that immediately scanned the room and landed on Jasmine. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her clothes. "Is this the problem, Brenda?" Halloway asked, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that commanded attention. "Yes, Captain," Brenda chirped, suddenly acting like a flustered schoolgirl. "She claims she's the J. Banks on your manifest. I tried to tell her to leave, but she's refusing." Halloway walked over to Jasmine, stopping just inside her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale coffee. He looked down at her, a smirk playing on his lips. "Listen, sweetheart," Halloway said, dropping his voice to a patronizing purr. "I appreciate the hustle. I really do. Maybe you're a fan of the plane. Maybe you're looking for a job. But we don't hire cleaners this way. You need to apply through the agency." "I'm not a cleaner," Jasmine said, holding his gaze. She didn't blink. "I'm the passenger." Halloway laughed. It was a loud, barking sound. He turned to Timothy. "Tim, did you hear that?" "She's the passenger." Timothy looked at his shoes, clearly uncomfortable. "Captain, maybe we should check her ID." "Quiet, Tim," Halloway snapped, not looking away from Jasmine. "I've been flying these birds for 30 years. I know what my clientele looks like. They wear bespoke suits. They carry Birkin bags. They don't wear whatever this is." He gestured vaguely at her hoodie. "Clothes do not determine net worth, Captain," Jasmine said quietly. "And right now, you are wasting fuel and time. I have a meeting in London at 2:00 p.m. GMT. We need to be wheels up in 15 minutes. Halloway stepped closer, his face turning a shade of red. Don't you tell me about my schedule. I decide when we go, wheels up. And I am not spooling up a $60 million aircraft for a prank. Where is the real Mr. Banks? Mr. Banks? Jasmine raised an eyebrow. The guy paying the bills, Halloway said, exasperated. The CEO, the man listed on my sheet. The manifest says J. Banks. It doesn't say Mr. Banks, Jasmine corrected him. And the J stands for Jasmine. Halloway sighed, a long, theatrical exhale of frustration. He turned to Brenda. Call the police. Get her for trespassing. I have to do a pre-flight check, and I don't want to see her face when I come back through here. Already dialing, Captain, Brenda said, reaching for the phone again. Jasmine didn't move. She didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She simply reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. You really don't want to do that, Captain Halloway, Jasmine said. Oh, and why is that? You going to tweet about me? Halloway sneered. Go ahead. I'm the best pilot in the tri-state area. My record is spotless. Nobody cares what a trespasser thinks. I'm not going to tweet, Jasmine said. She tapped the screen of her phone. I'm texting Leo Fitzpatrick. For the first time, a flicker of recognition crossed Halloway's face. The name Fitzpatrick carried weight in the aviation world. Leo Fitzpatrick was known as the Shark of the Skies, the vicious legal counsel for the parent company, Stratosphere Aviation. How do you know that name? Halloway demanded, his eyes narrowing. I know a lot of names, Jasmine said. I know that you were suspended 2 years ago for insubordination at Delta, before you moved to private charters. I know that you have 3 formal complaints against you for conduct unbecoming of an officer, all filed by female co-pilots. And I know that your contract with Stratosphere is up for renewal next month. The room went deadly silent. The hum of the refrigerator in the corner suddenly seemed deafening. Brenda paused, the phone halfway to her ear. Halloway took a step back. You hacked my file. That's a felony. Brenda, call the cops now. She's a cybercriminal or a stalker. I didn't hack your file, Brock, Jasmine said, using his first name for the first time. It sounded like a reprimand from a mother to a child. I have access to the HR files because I requested them during the due diligence phase. Due diligence? Halloway sputtered. What are you talking about? You think Stratosphere Aviation is just a charter company, Jasmine said, stepping forward, forcing Halloway to give ground. But Stratosphere was struggling. High overheads, lawsuits, bad personnel management. She glanced at Brenda. So they looked for a buyer, a white knight to save them from bankruptcy. I don't believe you, Halloway said, though his voice wavered. You're lying. You're crazy. The police are on their way, Brenda announced, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. They'll be here in 5 minutes. Good, Jasmine said. I'll need a police report for the insurance claim when I fire you both for cause. Halloway's face turned purple. You listen to me, you little... He reached out and grabbed Jasmine's upper arm. It was a mistake. A massive, career-ending mistake. Jasmine didn't flinch. She looked down at his hand on her cashmere sleeve, then up into his eyes. Her gaze was terrifyingly blank. Take your hand off me. Halloway froze. He didn't let go, but he didn't squeeze. He was locked in a moment of indecision, his arrogance battling with a sudden, creeping dread. If you don't release me in 1 second, Jasmine whispered, I will make sure you never fly anything bigger than a paper airplane for the rest of your life. At that moment, the glass doors blew open again. 2 airport police officers rushed in, hands on their belts. What's the problem here? The lead officer shouted. Halloway smiled, finally letting go of her arm. He turned to the cops, putting on his best, trustworthy pilot face. "Officers, thank God. This woman is trespassing, harassing my ground staff and refusing to leave. She's clearly mentally unstable." The officer looked at Jasmine. "Ma'am, is this true?" Jasmine adjusted her sleeve where Halloway had grabbed her. She looked at the officer, then back at Halloway. "Officer," Jasmine said calmly, "I would like to file charges for assault, and then I would like you to escort these 2 employees off my property." Halloway laughed again. "Her property? See? I told you she was crazy. She thinks she owns the airport." "I don't own the airport," Jasmine corrected. "I own the plane. And as of this morning, I own the company that signs your checks." She held up her phone. On the screen was a video call connecting. The face that appeared was sharp, severe, and wearing a very expensive suit. It was Leo Fitzpatrick. "Leo," Jasmine said to the screen, "we have a problem at Teterboro." Leo's voice boomed from the speaker, crisp and terrifying. "I heard Miss Banks. I'm looking at the live security feed from the lobby. Did Captain Halloway just put his hands on you?" Halloway's face went white. He looked at the security camera in the corner of the ceiling, then back at the phone. "Miss Banks?" Halloway whispered. The trap had snapped shut. The silence in the Teterboro terminal was heavy, broken only by the tinny, distorted voice of Leo Fitzpatrick, coming from Jasmine's smartphone. "Captain Halloway," Leo's voice sliced through the air. "I am recording this interaction. You are currently obstructing the movement of the chairwoman of the board. If you do not stand down immediately, I will have the FAA revoke your license before lunch." Brock Halloway stared at the phone. His face was a mask of panic, but his ego, 30 years of being the king of his own little cockpit, wouldn't let him fold. Not in front of the police, not in front of Brenda, and certainly not in front of a woman wearing a hoodie. "This is a trick," Halloway stammered, turning to the police officer. "Officer, look at this. She's using a deep fake app. That's not the real Leo Fitzpatrick. I know Leo. He doesn't sound like that. This woman is a professional con artist." The lead officer, a burly man with a thick mustache named Sergeant Miller, looked confused. He looked at the well-dressed pilot, then at the receptionist in the blazer, and finally at Jasmine in her casual clothes. Biases kicked in. The pilot looked like authority. Jasmine looked like trouble. "Ma'am," Sergeant Miller said, his hand resting near his holster, "put the phone down. I need to see physical identification. Real ID, not a picture on a screen." "I already offered my passport," Jasmine said calmly, her voice steady. "Brenda refused to look at it." Brenda scoffed from behind the desk. "I didn't refuse. I just said I wasn't touching it because it looked tampered with." Jasmine slowly bent down to pick up her passport from the counter where she had left it. "Don't reach!" Miller shouted, stepping forward. Jasmine froze. She moved her hand in slow motion, picking up the blue booklet with 2 fingers. She held it out to the officer. Miller snatched it. He opened it, squinting at the photo, then at Jasmine. He rubbed his thumb over the laminate, checking for ridges. He held it up to the light to check the hologram. It was real. Undeniably real. "The name matches," Miller said, looking at Halloway. "Jasmine Banks." "So what?" Halloway barked. "So her name is Jasmine Banks. That doesn't mean she owns the plane. It's a common name. She probably saw the flight manifest on a hacking forum and decided to try her luck. Officer, think about it. Does she look like she owns a Gulfstream G6 Home 50? That machine burns $5,000 of fuel an hour. She looks like she took the bus here." Jasmine watched Halloway carefully. She saw the sweat beading on his upper lip. He was drowning, but he was thrashing so hard he was trying to pull everyone else down with him. "Captain," Jasmine said, her voice dropping an octave. "I am going to give you one chance, just one. This is the off-ramp." Halloway glared at her. "Excuse me?" "You are digging a hole," Jasmine said. "You have humiliated me. You have assaulted me. You have wasted my time. But I am a pragmatist. I need to be in London. If you apologize right now, sincerely, and get on that plane and fly me safely to Luton, I will let you keep your job. I will chalk this up to a terrible misunderstanding." She looked him dead in the eye. "Apologize, Brock. Save your pension." For a second, the room held its breath. Timothy, the young co-pilot, looked at Halloway with pleading eyes, silently begging him to take the deal. Even Brenda looked uncertain, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. But Brock Halloway was a man defined by his pride. He looked at the woman he considered beneath him, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't submit. Halloway laughed, a cruel, incredulous laugh. "Apologize? To you? I'd sooner fly cargo to Antarctica. Officer, arrest her. I want her out of my terminal. I have a schedule to keep, and my real boss is going to be here any minute to clear this mess up." "Your real boss?" Jasmine asked. "Mr. Arthur Pendleton," Halloway announced smugly. "The CEO of Stratosphere Aviation. I texted him when you started your little charade. He's on his way to greet the VIP personally. When he walks through those doors, he's going to have a good laugh while they drag you away in handcuffs." Jasmine's expression didn't change, but a tiny, dangerous smile touched the corners of her lips. "Arthur is coming?" she asked. "Yes," Halloway sneered. "And he doesn't suffer fools." "Good," Jasmine said. "I haven't seen Arthur since the closing dinner. He has some paperwork for me." "You are delusional," Halloway shouted. "Officer, get her out of here." Sergeant Miller sighed. He stepped toward Jasmine. "Ma'am, look. The pilot is the authority on the aircraft. If he says you aren't flying, you aren't flying. You're technically trespassing now. You need to come with us. We can sort out the identity theft stuff at the station." Jasmine didn't move. She looked out the glass doors at the grey morning light. "I'm not going anywhere, officer, and neither are you. Because the truth is pulling up right now." Everyone turned to look at the driveway outside the glass terminal walls. A sleek, black Mercedes-Maybach S-Class rolled to a silent stop at the curb. It was the kind of car that screamed old money and corporate power. The driver's door opened, and a chauffeur in a cap hurried around to open the rear passenger door. Halloway pumped his fist. "There he is! That's Mr. Pendleton! Now you're done! You are so done!" Halloway rushed to the revolving doors, practically tripping over himself to greet the man who stepped out. Arthur Pendleton was a man of 60, dressed in a three-piece tweed suit that cost more than the Honda Civic parked in the employee lot. He had the air of a man who had just sold a company for 9 figures and was looking forward to a long retirement in Tuscany. He carried a leather document folio under his arm. Halloway burst through the doors, meeting Pendleton on the sidewalk. "Mr. Pendleton, thank God you're here!" Halloway gushed, shaking the older man's hand vigorously. "We have a crisis, a security breach." Arthur Pendleton frowned, pulling his hand away. "A breach? The terminal is secure, isn't it?" "It's inside," Halloway said, pointing back at the lobby. "Some lunatic woman. She waltzed in off the street, looking like a hobo, claiming to be the passenger for the G-50. She's claiming to be J. Banks. She even has a fake passport. I had to call the police. She's refusing to leave." Pendleton stopped walking. He looked at Halloway with a confused expression. "A woman? In casual clothes?" "Yes, a hoodie. Can you believe it?" Halloway laughed nervously. "She claims she knows you. She's totally unhinged. I told the cops to arrest her, but I wanted you to see this first so we can press maximum charges." Pendleton's face went pale. He didn't look at Halloway. He looked past him, through the glass walls of the terminal, directly at Jasmine Banks, who was standing calmly by the reception desk with 2 police officers hovering over her. "Oh no," Pendleton whispered. "Brock, what did you do?" "I protected the asset, sir," Halloway beamed. "I told her you were coming to kick her out." Pendleton shoved Halloway aside with surprising strength. "Get out of my way, you idiot!" Pendleton rushed through the revolving doors, almost running into the lobby. The sudden entrance startled Sergeant Miller, who put a hand on his taser. "Mr. Pendleton?" Brenda asked from the desk, smiling brightly. "The police are just taking her away." Arthur Pendleton ignored Brenda. He ignored the police. He walked straight up to Jasmine Banks, who was checking her cuticles with an air of utter boredom. To the shock of everyone in the room, Arthur Pendleton, the titan of aviation, the man Halloway worshipped, bowed his head. It wasn't a nod. It was a bow of genuine subservience and apology. "Miss Banks," Arthur said, his voice trembling slightly. "I am so sorry. I got here as fast as I could. The traffic on the bridge was terrible. Please tell me you haven't been waiting long." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence where you could hear a career dying. Brock Halloway stood by the door, his mouth open. Brenda stopped typing. Sergeant Miller took his hand off his taser and took a step back. Jasmine looked up at Arthur and smiled warmly. "Hello, Arthur. It's good to see you. Though your staff seems to be under the impression that I'm a vagrant." Arthur turned around, his face twisting into a mask of fury. He looked at Halloway, who was now trembling visibly. "Brock," Arthur barked. "Get over here." Halloway walked forward, his legs feeling like jelly. "Mr. Pendleton, she didn't look—" "Silence!" Arthur roared. The sound echoed off the marble walls. Arthur turned back to Jasmine. "Ms. Banks, please accept my deepest apologies. I assumed the transition memo had been circulated to all flight crews." "It was," Jasmine said coolly. "Leo sent it out 3 days ago. Captain Halloway apparently doesn't read emails from people he doesn't respect." Arthur handed the leather folio to Jasmine. "Here are the final countersigned transfer documents, Jasmine. The title for the fleet. The G650 is officially yours. Stratosphere Aviation is yours. The hangar we are standing in is yours." Jasmine took the folio. She didn't open it. She just held it against her chest and turned to look at Halloway. "Did you hear that, Captain?" Jasmine asked softly. Halloway couldn't speak. He made a croaking sound. Jasmine stepped closer to him. "Mr. Pendleton just confirmed it. I don't just fly on the plane, Brock. I own the wings. I own the engines. I own the seat you sit in. I own the fuel in the tanks. I own the uniform on your back." She gestured to the reception desk. "I own the computer Brenda is using to play solitaire. I own this building." She turned to Sergeant Miller. "Officer, I believe the trespassing complaint is now void, unless I want to file one." Miller holstered his weapon, looking terrified he might be sued just for being there. "Absolutely, Ms. Banks. Ma'am, I had no idea. We were just acting on the information provided by the caller." "I understand," Jasmine said graciously. "You were doing your job based on a false report." She turned back to Halloway. The captain looked like he was going to vomit. His tan had vanished, replaced by a sickly grey pallor. He looked at Arthur Pendleton for help, but Arthur was staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact with the man who had just embarrassed him in front of the new owner. "Ms. Banks," Halloway whispered, his voice cracking. I didn't know. If I had known, if you had known I was rich, you would have treated me with respect?" Jasmine finished the sentence for him. "That is the problem, Brock. You shouldn't need to see a bank statement to treat a human being with basic dignity." "I can fix this," Halloway pleaded, his hands shaking. "Let me fly you to London. We can make up the time. I'll get us there fast. Smooth ride. Best service you've ever had. Please. Jasmine looked at her watch. I do need to get to London. Halloway's eyes lit up with a spark of hope. Yes, right away. I'll prep the cabin. Tim, get the bags. Stop, Jasmine said. Halloway froze. I need to get to London, Jasmine repeated. But I wouldn't feel safe in an aircraft piloted by a man with such poor judgment. You judged a book by its cover, Brock. In aviation, assumptions kill people. If you assume a mechanic tightened a bolt without checking, people die. If you assume the weather is clear without checking, people die. And you assumed I was nobody because of a hoodie. She leaned in close. You are relieved of duty, Captain. Effective immediately. Halloway gasped. You can't fire me. I have a contract. The union. I'm not just firing you from this flight, Jasmine said, her voice like ice. I am the CEO. I am firing you from the company. She turned to Arthur. Arthur, do we have a reserve pilot on standby? Yes, Arthur said immediately. Captain Sorensen is in the crew lounge. She can be ready in 10 minutes. Captain Sorensen? Halloway sputtered. She's a woman. She has half my flight hours. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. She also has 0 harassment complaints and, unlike you, she reads her emails. Arthur, get Sorensen and tell Timothy he's flying with her. He's the first officer now. Timothy, the young co-pilot who had been cowering in the corner, looked up, stunned. Me? Yes, Tim, Jasmine said kindly. You tried to check my ID. You wanted to do the right thing. You just lacked the courage to stand up to a bully. We'll work on that. She turned back to Halloway. Now, get out of my terminal and leave the uniform. It's company property. The air in the private terminal at Teterboro had changed. It no longer smelled of expensive coffee and floor wax. It smelled of fear. Specifically, the acrid, panicked sweat of a man watching his entire identity disintegrate in real time. Captain Brock Halloway stood rooted to the spot. His brain, usually capable of calculating fuel loads and wind vectors in seconds, had suffered a catastrophic failure. He was processing the impossible. The woman in the hoodie wasn't just a passenger. She was the owner. She was the one who had just bought the $65 million bird sitting on the ramp. The uniform, Brock, Jasmine repeated, her voice eerily calm. I won't ask a third time. Halloway looked down at his chest, the double-breasted navy blazer with the gold bullion stripes on the cuffs, the gold wings pinned above his heart, the tie with the subtle stratosphere logo woven into the silk. He had worn this uniform like armor for 5 years. It made him feel tall. It made people listen to him. Without it, he was just a 58-year-old man with 2 ex-wives, a mortgaged condo in Hackensack, and a bad knee. You can't be serious, Halloway stammered, his voice sounding thin and reedy. It's cold outside. You want me to walk out there in my undershirt? I don't particularly care if you walk out there in a barrel, Brock, Jasmine said, taking a step closer. But you are not wearing my company's insignia while being escorted off the premises for assault and gross misconduct. You have disgraced the uniform. Take it off. Arthur Pendleton, the former owner, cleared his throat awkwardly. She's right, Brock. Technically, per the Pilot Handbook, Section 4, Article 2, all uniforms remain the property of Stratosphere Aviation upon termination. And you are definitely terminated. Halloway's hands shook as he reached for the gold buttons of his blazer. His fingers felt numb. He undid the top button, then the middle. He shrugged the heavy jacket off, revealing a white pilot's shirt that was straining at the gut. He held the jacket out, but Jasmine didn't take it. Put it on the counter, she said. I don't want to touch it. Halloway dropped the blazer on the marble counter next to Brenda's keyboard. He looked at Jasmine, pleading with his eyes. "The shirt, too." "The epaulettes," Jasmine said, pointing to the gold stripes on his shoulders. "And the tie." With trembling fingers, Halloway unbuttoned the shoulder straps and slid off the 4 gold stripes, the sign of a captain. He placed them on the counter. Then he loosened the tie and pulled it off. He stood there, stripped of his rank, looking deflated and pathetic. He was no longer Captain Halloway. He was just Brock. And Brenda? Jasmine turned her gaze to the reception desk. Brenda jumped. She had been trying to make herself invisible, hunching behind her monitor, furiously closing windows on her computer screen. When Jasmine said her name, Brenda looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. Me, Brenda squeaked. "Miss Banks, I was just following protocol. Captain Halloway told me you were a threat. I was scared. I have a family." Jasmine walked over to the desk, leaning her elbows on the high marble top. She looked down at Brenda with a mixture of pity and disappointment. "Protocol?" Jasmine asked. "Brenda, I walked in here with a valid passport. You refused to look at it. You refused to check the manifest. You mocked my clothes. You called me a delivery driver. That isn't protocol. That is bias. I was having a bad morning," Brenda lied, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, I need this job. My health insurance. You called the police on a customer because you didn't like how she looked," Jasmine said firmly. "You actively participated in the harassment. You laughed when the captain threatened me." Jasmine sighed. "I'm not going to fire you, Brenda." Brenda let out a sob of relief. "Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Banks. I promise I'll be the best." "I'm not going to fire you," Jasmine interrupted, "because you don't work for Stratosphere Aviation. You work for the FBO, the terminal operator. But I am going to call the manager of this facility, and I am going to tell them that Stratosphere, their biggest client, will be moving our entire fleet to a different hangar if you are ever staffing this desk again." Brenda's face crumbled. That was a death sentence for her career at this airport. Jasmine turned back to Sergeant Miller. "Officer, please escort Mr. Halloway and Ms. Brenda off the property. Make sure Mr. Halloway doesn't go near the crew lockers. His personal effects can be mailed to him." "Yes, ma'am," Miller said, his tone now deeply respectful. He grabbed Halloway by the elbow. "Let's go, pal. Move it." Halloway resisted for a second. He looked back at Arthur Pendleton. "Arthur, you can't let her do this. I'm the best pilot you have. Who's going to fly the GU-650 through the Atlantic tracks? Sorensen? She's too cautious. She'll burn too much fuel. You need me." Arthur couldn't even look at him. He was busy typing on his BlackBerry, already doing damage control. "Goodbye, Brock," Arthur muttered. Sergeant Miller shoved Halloway toward the revolving doors. The last image Jasmine had of Captain Brock Halloway was him stumbling through the glass doors, shivering in his white shirt, shouting at the wind as the automatic doors sealed shut behind him. The lobby fell silent. Jasmine let out a long breath, her shoulders dropping. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her exhausted. "Ms. Banks?" A soft voice spoke from the side. It was Timothy, the young first officer. He was standing as stiff as a board, his cap tucked under his arm, looking terrified that he was next on the chopping block. Jasmine turned to him. "Yes, Timothy?" I just wanted to say," Timothy stammered, his face bright red. "I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner. I knew. I felt like something was wrong. But he's the captain. We're taught in flight school. Cockpit gradient. You respect the command." Jasmine softened. She saw herself in him, young, eager, and crushed by a toxic hierarchy. "Timothy," Jasmine said gently, "respecting the command is important for flying the plane. but respecting human beings is important for living a life. Today you learned that sometimes the person with the most stripes on their shoulder is the smallest person in the room." She smiled. "Go help Captain Sorensen prep the aircraft. We leave in 20 minutes. I have a board meeting to catch." Timothy beamed, standing up straighter than he ever had in his life. "Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am." He turned and sprinted toward the tarmac door. Arthur Pendleton walked up to Jasmine, looking sheepish. "Jasmine." Again. "I am mortified. That man, I had no idea he was capable of that." "You didn't know because you look like him, Arthur," Jasmine said, picking up her rucksack. "He showed you his best face because he saw you as an equal. He showed me his true face because he saw me as a servant." She looked at the old man. "Let this be a lesson for your retirement. When you check into a hotel or a restaurant, watch how the staff treats the people who aren't wearing the suits. That's who they really are." Arthur nodded slowly, a look of genuine realization on his face. "I will. Safe flight, Jasmine. She's a beautiful plane. She deserves a better captain." "She has one now," Jasmine said. She pushed through the glass doors, out onto the windy tarmac, and walked toward the sleek, silver bird that was waiting to take her into the sky. The flight to London was smooth. Smoother, Jasmine noted, than any flight she had taken with Halloway. The Gulfstream G600 now officially hers, was a marvel of engineering. The cabin was pressurized to a lower altitude, meaning she arrived feeling refreshed rather than groggy. The leather seats were cream-colored, the wood veneer was a dark mahogany, and the silence was golden. Captain Elena Sorensen had come back to the cabin before takeoff. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. She didn't bow or scrape. She simply said, "Miss Banks, weather looks good. We have a tailwind over the Atlantic. I've reviewed the flight plan. We'll have you on the ground in Luton at 1:45 p.m. local time. Welcome aboard." That was it. Professional, competent, no ego. Now, cruising at 45,000 feet, Jasmine sat with a glass of sparkling water, finally opening her laptop. She connected to the plane's high-speed Wi-Fi, expecting to see emails about the merger. Instead, her notifications were exploding. Her assistant, Leo Fitzpatrick, had done exactly what he said he would. He hadn't just recorded the audio of Halloway's meltdown. He had pulled the CCTV footage from the FBO security system. As the legal counsel for Apex Logistics, he had immediate access to the security feeds of any facility they acquired. He had posted a 2-minute clip to Twitter and LinkedIn with the caption, "This is what bias looks like in the C-suite. My CIO, Jasmine Banks, denied boarding on her own jet by a pilot who thought she was the help. Meet Captain Brock Halloway." The internet, as it tends to do, had done the rest. Jasmine watched the view count tick up in real time. 50,000 views, 100,000 views, 500,000 views. The comments were a landslide of fury. "The way he grabbed her arm, that's assault." "I've flown with Halloway before on charters. Guy is a nightmare. Treats the flight attendants like garbage." Imagine telling the owner to clean the plane. The audacity is actually impressive. "Jasmine Banks is a legend. I own the seat you sit in. Chills." But the real karma wasn't happening in the comments section. It was happening in the real world, thousands of feet below. Teterboro, New Jersey, the parking lot Brock Halloway was sitting in his leased BMW 5 Series, staring at his phone. He had been sitting there for an hour, unable to turn the key in the ignition. He had tried to call his union rep. "Brock, I saw the video," the rep had said, his voice cold. "You grabbed the client. And not just any client, the new owner. There's nothing I can do. You violated the morals clause of your contract. Don't come to the hall." He had tried to call his agency, the one that booked him gig work for other wealthy clients. "Captain Halloway, we are removing you from our active roster, effective immediately. Please do not contact us again." And then, the final nail in the coffin arrived via an email notification. It was from the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. Subject: Notice of Investigation, PRIA Record Update. The Pilot Records Improvement Act, PRIA, is the database that every airline and charter company checks before hiring a pilot. It tracks training failures, drug tests, and disciplinary actions. Jasmine Banks hadn't just fired him. Leo Fitzpatrick had filed a formal report regarding the incident, citing endangerment, assault, and failure to adhere to security protocols. Halloway read the email through blurred vision. A flag on his PRIA record meant he was radioactive. No insurance company would cover a pilot with an assault complaint against a passenger on his file. He could apply to fly cargo rubber dog vomit out of Hong Kong in a leaking DI-3, and even they wouldn't hire him. His career was over. 30 years of flying, gone in 30 minutes because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. His phone buzzed again. It was a text from his girlfriend, a flight attendant for Delta. "Brock, people are sending me this video. Is that you? Did you really say that to a black woman? Do not come over tonight. I can't be seen with you. I'm serious." Halloway slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "It's not fair," he screamed at the empty windshield. "She tricked me. She set me up." But deep down, in the pit of his stomach, he knew the truth. She hadn't tricked him. She had just stood there. He had done all the work himself. He looked up at the sky. A silver jet was climbing out of Teterboro, banking east towards the Atlantic. It was the Gulf Stream. His Gulf Stream. He watched it until it was just a speck in the clouds, carrying Jasmine Banks to London, while he sat in a parking lot in New Jersey, wondering how he was going to pay next month's rent. Jasmine closed her laptop. She didn't feel glee. She didn't feel a rush of victory. She just felt a quiet sense of correction. The universe was slightly more balanced than it had been this morning. Timothy, the newly promoted first officer, walked back into the cabin. He looked nervous but determined. "Ms. Banks?" he asked. "Captain Sorensen wanted to know if you'd like lunch served now. We have the catering from your favorite place in Manhattan." "Thank you, Timothy," Jasmine said. "And Tim?" "Yes, Mum?" "How does the plane feel?" Timothy smiled, a genuine, boyish grin. "She flies like a dream, Mom. And the cockpit is a lot quieter. In a good way. We're actually communicating." "Good," Jasmine said. "Communication is key. You remember that?" "I will," Timothy said. He hesitated. "Can I ask, what's going to happen to Brock?" Jasmine looked out the window at the endless blue horizon. "Brock is going to learn a very hard lesson, Tim," she said. "He spent his whole life thinking that power was something you wore on your shoulders. He's about to find out that power is something you carry in your character, and without that character, the uniform is just a costume." She turned back to him. "Now let's get to London. We have a company to run." As the jet roared through the stratosphere, leaving the turbulence far behind, Jasmine Banks finally closed her eyes and slept. She had earned it. 6 months later, the world had moved on, as it always does. The viral video of the Teterboro incident had faded from the trending tabs of Twitter and TikTok, replaced by new scandals and new heroes. But within the insulated high-stakes world of private aviation, everything had changed. Jasmine Banks sat in the executive boardroom of Stratosphere Aviation in downtown Manhattan. The glass walls offered a panoramic view of the Hudson River, but Jasmine was focused on the quarterly report projected on the screen. The numbers were staggering. Since the restructuring, profit margins were up 18%. But more importantly to Jasmine, employee retention was at an all-time high. The toxic old boys club culture that had rotted the company from the inside out was gone. "As you can see," Leo Fitzpatrick said, pointing a laser pointer at the chart, "the rebranding has been a massive success. Clients, especially our younger tech sector billionaires, appreciate the new ethos. They like flying with a company that values competence over pedigree. We've stolen 3 major accounts from NetJets this month alone." Jasmine nodded, tapping her pen on the mahogany table. "And the personnel file, is that fully resolved?" Leo's expression tightened slightly. He clicked to the next slide. It showed a legal summary. "The wrongful termination lawsuit filed by Mr. Halloway was dismissed with prejudice yesterday afternoon," Leo announced with a shark-like grin. The judge watched the security footage once and asked Halloway's lawyer if he really wanted to proceed and risk paying our legal fees. They withdrew the case immediately. "Good," Jasmine said quietly. "And Halloway?" "That's the hard, calmer part you asked about," Leo said. He slid a folder across the table to her. Jasmine opened it. Inside was a report from a private investigator, a standard procedure to ensure no disgruntled former employees posed a security threat to the firm. Brock Halloway hadn't just lost his job, he had lost his status. The PRIA, Pilot Records Improvement Act record, is the Bible of the aviation industry. With a permanent flag for passenger aggression and security violation, Halloway was radioactive. He had sold his condo in Hackensack to cover his debts. He was currently living in a 1-bedroom rental near Newark Liberty Airport. But the real blow was his employment. The man who used to command a $65 million Gulfstream G650, flying royalty and rock stars to Paris and Dubai, was now working for a budget cargo logistics company on the ground. "He's a dispatch supervisor for a trucking fleet," Leo explained. "He sits in a cubicle from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., tracking delivery routes for frozen poultry. He doesn't fly. He doesn't even see planes. He watches dots move on a screen." Jasmine looked at the grainy photo attached to the file. Halloway looked older. He had gained weight. He wasn't wearing a crisp navy blazer with gold buttons. He was wearing a high-visibility yellow vest over a stained polo shirt. He looked miserable. "He tried to apply to Flight Safety International to be a simulator instructor," Leo added. "They laughed him out of the building. His reputation is scorched earth, Jasmine. He will never sit in a cockpit again." Jasmine closed the folder. She felt a twinge of pity, but it was fleeting. Halloway had been given every advantage in life: race, gender, tenure, and he had thrown it all away because he couldn't handle his own ego. "It's a tragedy of his own making," Jasmine said. "File it. I don't want to see his name again." "Understood," Leo said. "Oh, and one more thing. Captain Sorensen sent a message from the tarmac in Tokyo. She says the G650 is prepped and ready for your return trip. She also mentioned that First Officer Timothy just passed his captain's check ride. He's the youngest captain in the fleet." Jasmine smiled. "Send Timothy a bottle of Dom Perignon, and tell him I said congratulations. That kid deserved a chance, and he took it." Jasmine stood up and walked to the window. Far below, the city was bustling, 1 million people rushing to get somewhere, making assumptions, judging each other, fighting for their spot in the hierarchy. She thought back to that cold morning in Teterboro. She thought about the hoodie, the sneakers, and the look of disgust on Halloway's face. It was a reminder that in the modern world, power doesn't always look like a suit and tie. Sometimes, power is quiet. Sometimes, power is just knowing exactly who you are when everyone else is trying to tell you who you're not. She checked her reflection in the glass. She was wearing a hoodie again. This time, a navy blue cashmere one She had a flight to catch, and this time nobody was going to stop her at the gate. And that is the story of how one arrogant assumption destroyed a 30-year career in 30 seconds. Brock Halloway learned the hard way that the golden rule isn't just for kindergarten, it's for business. When you treat people based on how they look rather than who they are, you aren't just being rude, you're gambling with your future. And in Jasmine Banks's case, the house always wins. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Did Halloway deserve his fate, or was the punishment too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story of drama, karma, and redemption. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind to everyone, because you never know who is actually signing the checks.